Hi, I'm Anushka, mum to my 1-year-old son. He's now 14 months. And today I just wanted to do a quick review of a book I just read, which is Good Inside by Becky Kennedy. So this was recommended to me by a friend, and I am so glad that I read it because it's just been so useful for me to understand different aspects of parenting and hopefully be a better parent to my son going forward. So there's a few different concepts that I wanted to discuss from this book. Um, I'll just pick the top three because I just want to keep this brief and useful. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was this notion that a child's job is just to have experiences and express emotions. That is their whole job. That's their sole purpose in life, to have lots of different experiences and express emotions. And a parent's job is to help keep them safe, and part of that is helping them regulate their emotion. And I think for me, as with a lot of parents, it can be quite triggering when your child is having a temper tantrum, or they're having difficult behavior, not being difficult, but having behavior that can be difficult to manage in a particular context or setting. And you feel like this is them doing something to you. You're like, why are you being so making it so difficult for me? Why are you doing this to me? And really, it's like trying to keep in mind that their whole job is just to have experiences and express emotions. And if they're having an experience that is overwhelming or overstimulating, and they're expressing this emotion of, this is too much for me, I can't contain this, and kind of just the way that manifests is them screaming and throwing themselves on the ground. That is them expressing this emotion of, this is overstimulating and I can't manage these emotions of just too much noise, too much whatever. Or if I want a certain toy and I can't have it, this is an emotion where they want something they can't have, makes them angry and frustrated and upset, and so then they're screaming and getting angry and throwing themselves around. And while this feels like something that they're doing to you, they're doing their whole job. That they're doing an amazing job expressing their emotions. And so our job is to help keep them safe, and help them express their emotions and regulate their emotion. And so I think that cannot be said enough, and I've been trying to keep that in mind when my child is getting really upset about something. He's had his breakfast, but he wants to eat my breakfast, like this morning, and I'm eating something that he can't have, and then having to say, I'm sorry, but my job is to help keep you safe, and you eating chicken link sausages is not part of that. So then helping regulate his emotion when he's frustrated about that. Yeah, then the second point that I wanted to talk about was this concept of duality, like addressing their emotions and recognizing and validating it, and holding a boundary. Like, you can do both. And I think sometimes I in particular feel like saying sorry to him, like, I'm sorry you can't do this, but actually we don't have to say sorry. Our job is to hold a boundary, and you can do this by saying, yes, I know it must be so frustrating that you can't eat what mama's eating. That must be so annoying when you see mama eating it, you can't have it. And I need to make sure that you eat healthy food, and you have a nutritious breakfast in the morning. And as part of that, we can't give you, I don't know, sausages, or you can't have sugar before you're 2. So we're going to have to wait a little while. Or sometimes I take things away from him, like if he has a flower or a leaf that he's holding, but then he tries eating it, and I'm saying, I'll say E, or his name, if you continue eating this flower, mama will need to take it away from you because you're not quite there yet to be able to hold it without eating it, and we'll try again another day. And if he continues to eat it, then I'll say, okay, we're going to have to take this away now, and we'll try again another day and see if you can hold a flower without eating it. So yeah, these are just examples of things that I'm trying right now in this concept of, like, 2 things can be true. She says a lot, like, 2 things can be true. One, I can recognize that you are upset, and I can hold a boundary and make sure that you don't do what it is you're doing. So 2 things can be true, and you can say this to your child. You can say, I'm sorry, Sarah, two things can be true. You can be upset that you can't go over to your friend's house to play, and we need to make sure that you finish your homework and stay home today. Or two things can be true. I am upset at you and I love you. And it's not a but, because then it introduces this concept of like, I'm upset at you, but I love you. Like there might be a point at which you don't love them, or a reason for which you don't love them. So, two things can be true. I am upset at you and I love you. And hold your boundary. I know that's easier said than done, but yeah, I think I often struggle with this, with like leaving the park. Like my son doesn't want to go, but then we have to go and get lunch started or go back home to do his nap or whatever, and then holding that boundary. I'll be like, okay, one more time on the slide and then we go. But yeah, I'm working on this as well, in terms of being like giving him a countdown, be like, oh, we'll go on the slide 2 more times and then we're going to have to get back in the stroller and go home. And he is only 14 months, but I think practicing this kind of communication and way of speaking to him now will really help me as he grows older and is able to understand it a bit more. The third thing I wanted to talk about was shame. I think this was probably like quite triggering for me to read, because this is something that I wish I had had in my own childhood a bit more at all, was just containment in shame is really important. So when a child has done something that they're not allowed to do, like for example, she gives an example of a child who's taken their sister's lovey and hidden it, and the sister's really upset and like screaming and wants the lovey, and like the older child then won't. It's like, you're like, did you take sister's lovey? And they're like, no, I didn't do it. And on one hand you might think, oh, they're lying to me, how dare they lie to me? Or it's giving them the most generous interpretation of what they've done. It's like, or the idea that they have taken their sister's lovey and hidden it is so hard for them to accept, that this is something that I've done, that it's causing this shame. And the easiest way to then get away from this version of themselves that brings them shame is to act as if they haven't done it, and feel like, refuse to accept that they have done it, because to sit with this version of themselves that they don't like is causing them so much shame, and is like, it's unbearable. They can't deal with it. So the first step to do, rather than addressing the behavior, is actually containing the shame and giving them connection and making them feel loved and appreciated. And you can do this in different ways, by just sitting with them and like existing in their space, holding space for them. You could also use soft toys to reenact the situation at a later time. Be like, oh, elephant took giraffe's lovey and hid it. Elephant will now go apologize to giraffe and say, I'm sorry for taking your lovey, and then address the behavior, through soft toys later. But like, I guess the first point is just containing their shame, because when shame starts sitting with a child and eating away at them, it can result in like a lot of deep-seated long-term issues where they're unable to process this feeling, and like feels like not liking themselves, which is really a horrible thing for a child to experience, and then it grows over time. So those were my top 3 things. And I think one bonus thing, is just, I guess as a parent, there's lots of times that you will feel inadequate. You will feel like, I'm doing a bad job. And as I was saying, the other thing that, I think it's important to keep in mind is, we're not perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. And even if, you sometimes snap at your child, or you're not as understanding of the fact that they're having the experiences and emotions, we're there to help them, all of that, the important thing is to talk about it afterwards and just say, oh, Mama was feeling a bit overwhelmed. I'm sorry that I snapped at you. I shouldn't have done that. This wasn't your fault. And address the moment. Be like, oh, that must have been scary for you. That must have been kind of scary for you when Mama was feeling overwhelmed. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to stay calm around you, and I will try to do that better next time. Or that must have been kind of scary, huh? I think just recognizing it, not just brushing it under the rug and ignoring it is really important. I feel like this is something I'm gonna have to really like work on doing for myself, in terms of like feeling guilty about, if I'm getting frustrated at my child, and be like, please, like, I might just be like, please, can you just hang in there? We're gonna get there in 3 minutes. If we're in the car and he's screaming in the car seat, I'd be like, please, as my son's name, like, please, can you just wait 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. But actually recognizing, being stuck in a car seat, strapped in without really understanding how long it's going to be for, and not having things that are really engaging, is probably quite frustrating as a child. Like, they want to be playing with you, they want to be entertained, they want other people engaging with them. So being stuck in a car seat when I am driving and no one else is in the car is probably quite annoying. And it's quite reasonable for him to be frustrated about that, and also quite reasonable for me to maybe get triggered by that and overwhelmed when I'm also stuck in the car and he's screaming, and be a bit more forgiving with myself. The last thing I just wanted to talk about was something that we are currently focusing on, is sleep with my son. So he has been sleeping through the night since he's been about 1 year old, and we have night weaned him, and we are now in the process of trying to get him to sleep in his own bed. So one thing she talks about with sleep training, I guess, older children, is just this concept that like children want you all the time, and that comes to a bit of a conflict where we as parents want our own time in the evenings, but they want your presence. And one way to infuse your presence in their room and around them when you're not there is to have things that, a shirt that smells like you around them, have a photograph of you and them next to their bedside, and have something that she calls a comfort button. So like a little recordable button that you can buy with 30 seconds of time at least on it, and when you're in a calm space, you record yourself on there saying, you are safe, you are loved, mama loves you, dada loves you, and have this kind of thing that you say on there. And maybe they play it to themselves once when you're with them, once like before bed, after bed, and then whenever they want during the night. They know that this button is there, and they can feel your presence by playing this recording. So probably won't do this with my son at this point, because he'll probably just try and eat it. But it's definitely something that we're going to be exploring as we try and like make sleep in his own room, in his own bed, a safe space for him, and maybe try and introduce like a comfort button. Maybe it's a larger thing that he can't eat. I haven't looked into it properly, but that's definitely something that I want to try and instill in his bedtime routine, because I think sleep can be quite scary for a child, to be away from their parent in the dark, in a bed on their own, when they just want your presence around them. They just want you, and like, how can we fault them for that? So those are my key takeaways from the book. I hope this was useful. Please let me know if you've read it, if you have any thoughts, other takeaways that you've had that you want to share, and any other books that you'd like to recommend to me. Thank you.